All right, let's dive into one of the biggest questions in all of philosophy, and we're going to do it through the eyes of one of the greats, Plato. The question is simple, but the answer is anything but. Can our soul actually survive the death of our body? Let's see what he had to say.
So, to set the scene, you have to picture this. We're in ancient Athens, and the legendary philosopher Socrates is in his final hours. He's literally been sentenced to death. But when his friends come to see him, they're just baffled. He's not scared, he's not sad, he's actually calm, maybe even happy. Why? Because he is absolutely convinced that death isn't the end. For him, it's just a release, because he believes deep down that his soul is immortal, and he's about to lay out his case.
Okay, so before we can even touch Socrates' arguments, we need to get our heads around the world as Plato, his student, saw it. Because for Plato, reality isn't just one thing. Nope. He thought it was split into two completely different realms.
On one hand, you've got the world we live in, right? The physical world. It's kind of messy. Things are always changing, they're imperfect, they're even contradictory. You know, a tall guy on a basketball team might be considered a short guy on another. But then there's this other reality, the realm of forms. This place is perfect, it's eternal, it never changes. This is where the idea of perfect justice lives, or the perfect circle, or perfect beauty. Our bodies, they experience the physical world. But Plato was convinced that it's our souls that can reach out and grasp the perfection of the forms.
So this whole idea of two different realms, it's the launchpad for Socrates' very first argument for why the soul has to be immortal. You can think of it as the like knows like argument, or, the old saying, it takes one to know one.
The logic is actually pretty clean when you lay it out. It goes like this. The forms, perfect justice, perfect beauty, they're timeless, they're not physical things. And step 2, to understand something, you have to be kind of like it. Only something eternal can really grasp another eternal thing. Well, since our soul is the part of us that gets these forms, it must have that same eternal, non-physical nature. As Plato would say, the impure can't really touch the pure. Makes sense, right?
It's a really elegant idea, for sure. But, with any good piece of philosophy, you gotta kick the tires a little bit. We have to really stress test that main idea. Is it actually true that you have to be like something in order to understand it?
And this is where it gets interesting, because when you apply this knows-like rule to pretty much anything else, it completely falls apart. I mean, a biologist can be the world's top expert on cats without being a cat. A historian can know everything about ancient Rome without being an ancient Roman. And maybe the most powerful example, a doctor can learn a ton about death by studying corpses without having to be dead. So that crucial second step of the argument just doesn't hold up. It's a cool idea, but it's not the proof Socrates needs.
All right, so argument number 1 has a pretty big hole in it. But Socrates isn't done yet. He's got more up his sleeve. Let's move on to his second attempt, which we can call the argument from cosmic recycling.
The basic idea here is that nature is super efficient. Nothing is ever really made from nothing, and nothing is ever totally destroyed. Instead, reality is just this huge grand process of assembly and disassembly. Parts that were already out there get put together to make something new, and when that thing is done, its basic parts just go back into the cosmic supply closet, ready for the next project. So if we take this big universal rule and apply it to ourselves, the argument goes something like this. We are made of parts. Our soul is one of those parts. Well, if that's true, then our soul must have been one of those pre-existing parts, and it's just going to get returned to that big cosmic part spin after we die. Simple.
And again, this sounds pretty good on the surface. But we have to stop and ask a really important question. Is it true that every single part of a complex thing is one of those fundamental, recyclable building blocks?
And this slide just illustrates the problem perfectly. Think about your own body. You have fundamental parts. The atoms that make you up are billions of years old. And yeah, they'll get recycled. But then you have assembled parts, like your heart. Your heart is a part of you, but it wasn't just sitting around waiting for you. It was built with you, and it will decompose with you. So here's the killer question. What if the soul is more like a heart than an atom? An assembled part, not a fundamental one. This argument just doesn't prove it either way.
So that weakness, that exact question, leads us right into Plato's third and, honestly, his most clever argument. It's built specifically to prove that the soul is a fundamental pre-existing part, and it's all based on this idea of recollection, kind of like a philosophical déjà vu. So, to really get this, let's start with a super simple everyday example. Let's say you see a photograph of your friend. We'll call her Ruth. You look at the picture, and it makes you think of your actual friend, Ruth. Now, here's the crucial part. The only reason that photo can remind you of Ruth is because you had prior acquaintance with her. You knew her before you saw the picture. If a total stranger looked at that same photo, it wouldn't remind them of anything, right? Because they never knew her. Remembering requires a pre-existing memory.
Okay, so Plato takes that exact logic and applies it to our knowledge of the forms. Think about it. We all have a concept of a perfectly straight line, but every single line you've ever seen is imperfect. We have an idea of perfect justice, but every law is flawed. Plato's argument is that these imperfect things in our world work just like that photograph. They remind us of the perfect version. And if being reminded means you had to know the thing beforehand, well then our souls must have known those perfect forms somewhere else before this life even began.
Now that is a powerful argument. It really feels like it cleverly sidesteps the problems from the first two arguments. It seems to prove the soul had to exist before this life. But the whole thing, all of it, hangs on one final, massive assumption.
And this is the fascinating puzzle Plato leaves us with. Is he right? Is the only possible explanation for our idea of perfect that our immortal souls literally saw it in another realm before we were born? Or is there another option? Is it possible that the human mind is just so creative, so powerful that it can look at a crooked stick and another crooked stick, and by reason and imagination alone invent the concept of a perfectly straight line without ever having seen one? The answer to that question? Well, that's what determines if Plato's whole argument for the soul stands or falls.